Alright, I don't know if I'll post this one or not, but basically the last attempt got interrupted by a phone call. So, we'll start squeezing some grease in here. Awesome. I am seeing grease. I am seeing grease squeeze out from around the bearing. And actually the part of the bearing where I'm not seeing any squeeze out down here. That's nice. And I can tell the pump, just the grease gun just got to an air bubble basically. So let's turn it over, make sure we're not just simply squeezing a ton out the bottom there. Nope. All right, it quit squeezing. Quit squeezing grease out for a second here, which is common annoyance with the dang grease guns. So got to work past the stupid air bubble. Waste a lot of grease. Okay, now it's squeezing out the end there. I can put it back on here, and okay, yeah, and you can feel the difference in the pressure when you squeeze it. And I got it staked nice and tight at the bottom there because I'm seeing the grease come out and move around the bearing here. And yep, nice. Okay, no binding like the other one, so I don't need to... oh, this is the one I ground anyway. Anyway, where I saw it come out of the bearing there would make me think that it went through the bearing and was pushing out the grease that's packed in the other bearing, or in the bearing originally. So, so that's actually perfect. I like that I got such a tight seal down here. Other than wiping the grease off and clean it up a little bit, this spindle is done. And yeah, that feels beautiful, and there is no play in it whatsoever. Awesome. I'll put it up for sale and get the dang thing out of my sight. Alright, said it was pretty much done, ready to sell. One thing I got brake clean here. I'm going to put just a little bit on a rag, drizzle it in there basically. I don't need it soaked. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to clean the grease off. I don't want to spray right onto this area because I don't want the brake clean seeping down in and contaminating the grease. I just want to clean the grease off the outside here. Part of the reason why I'm using brake clean is it dries without leaving a residue. Okay, so I'm just trying to get this cleaned up a little here. It only takes a second for it to dry. Took me far longer to get the RTV nozzle cleared back out. Okay, so let's oh, I need one of those toothpaste things I have for when the tube runs out, then you squeeze it down tight. Okay, I'm just going to run just a little bit around the edge here. Okay, and the point of that, the point of the sealant here is not so much to keep the grease from coming out. We don't care about that. What we care about is water getting in. Okay, so I'm going to just make sure that that is pushed down into that edge there. Now, may not be quite as pretty, but guess what? You know, once this stuff dries and you rattle can it with some black paint and stuff like that, it's going to look just fine. The part that's not going to look good is when your kingpins wear out because you get rust down in there, water down in there, and it kills your kingpins and that stuff. So make sure you grease these things regularly. I may put some of that on the bottom side and that stuff, but I don't see any reason to continue the video for that. I just wanted to put that out there. That's too, because on the bottom side too, the water doesn't collect under here. Okay, up here the water puddles and sits right on that seam and leaks in. Under here you know, if water were in that seam, well, gravity's going to pull it back out. Plus, too, it's got the steering arm in the way and that stuff, so it's really not that big a deal on the bottom. But on the top, I want to make sure that I don't have an area where water can pool and just sit there. That's what I do not want. So we've accomplished that. I'll do the other one, and then I think we're ready to call them good and sell them. Well, something come to light here. Working on Wayne's Kingpins. These are 521 Kingpins. And it's basically just a matter of assembly. Okay. What's going on here is that I noticed in the other videos and that stuff, I put it to where I set the shims and that stuff under the bearing and did it that way. That's still my preference. What I ran into here is that if let's see if you can see that or not. Maybe a little extra light. Okay, there is one heck of a recess in here. And I'm not sure if we can get enough of an angle. I've taken some pictures and that stuff, so you can see the ring there all the way around the outside diameter of the where the shim should be. There's also kind of a similar one in the anyway, there's a similar one in the spindle. The underside of the dog bone looks pretty good. Both dog bones have basically the same thing. The other one was just much more pronounced. So what the quandary is here is that, let's pull this back a bit here. Okay. What the challenge is that when I put this together, if the shims are under the bottom, okay, then I have this outer edge. This recess doesn't touch, this outer edge touches. Okay, same thing under here, since there's a slight, not really bad, hardly noticeable, negligible. Anyway, what happens is since that will be a wear point for the most part, and this is worn because the shims got so rusted they stuck together, and then every time it turned back and forth, they acted as little grinding wheels and wore this out. Okay, I don't want to try to mill that down or anything like that and get that flat again. One, the amount of work. Two, I wouldn't have enough shims then to fill the recess. So instead of putting the shims under the bearing down here where I did on the 320 spindles, I'm going to go ahead and put the shims up top here. Because basically what's going to happen is the shim will sit in that recess, okay, and take up that distance, and as long as it stays greased and stuff like that, it shouldn't wear anymore. Since they came from the factory with the shims up top here, I think it's really a 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, whatever you feel comfortable with as far as shims under the bearing or on top. Let's see. I'm going to go ahead and do that to both of them. They both show the same kind of wear. The difference is, the other thing is too, is when you go to measure your shim pack, you can't just put the bearing in and then push up on the spindle to get your spacing to measure it. Okay, because what you're doing then is you're not accounting for the recess that shim is going to sit into. Okay, so I think basically what I'm going to have to do is assemble it with 1 or 2 shims in there, then measure. Okay, and then take it back apart and add whatever shims I figured it was going to need. Okay, because even if I push it up against here, I can't measure at the bottom because the shims are going, there's still that divot that the shims are going to sit down into. So if you come across a similar problem, you will have to get a little creative and basically put a couple shims in the top, put it together, and then measure your shim pack. And then once you have the shims in the top, you could measure, if you have dimples top and bottom, recesses top and bottom, you won't be able to measure at the top. You'll basically have to measure at whatever your cleanest surface is. So if that happens to be between the bottom of the dog bone and the top of the bearing, measure it there. If it happens to be between the bottom of the bearing and the top of the bottom here, measure it there. Just don't measure it where the dimple is the worst. Okay. So I'm going to go about that measuring. I've already shown it in another video. So I don't think I'm going to show it here. All right, let's just go ahead and do it here. Okay, so I'm going to put the bushing in, try to keep a tight frame so the image is bigger, people can see the detail, but at the same time trying to keep everything in the shot. Okay, so put the Kingpin in, the bearing. We'll get it started here. Okay, it's started. Now I want to take at least 2 shims. I'm going to tuck them down in there, and I'm going to push the Kingpin up there. Now let's stand this up. Basically, I can see the Kingpin down in there. Let's lift up, push the Kingpin down just a little bit. Try to get the shims as close as you can there to center, and then there's a taper on the end of the Kingpin. It should push them. Okay, so now what I need to do, there's shims up here, so it's kind of hard to get in there and measure that. So I'm going to lift up. Okay, I'm going to lift up and I'm going to measure between the. Oh, and that's pretty nice. That's one of the original bushings, one of the thicker ones, basically. Okay, and if I try to get 2 in there, that doesn't work. Let's try the thick one and the thin one. Come on. Okay, now that thin one is even thinner than the 8,000ths of the new ones, and I'm still not getting it in there. Okay, so I think I'm gonna go with just the one thick one, and basically I did like I showed in one of the previous videos. I took the wire wheel and the Dremel thing basically and cleaned it all up. So let's see here. So now I could put the bushing down here, or the last shim down here. It's kind of a pain in the butt to deal with 2 sets of shim packs. So since we've got one up here anyway, we're just going to go ahead and I felt the other shim fall out, so that's definitely Kingpin's definitely far enough out. Okay, so now the trick is to get it in there, because I got to fight that lip. Since that bushing is not the bushing, since the shim is off center, basically I'm pushing it over and giving it a little wiggle there so that it moves against the friction, and of course that meant the Kingpin fell away. Okay, so I should be able to, there we go, give it a little turn and a wiggle. That put it in there. Now of course I have no idea where my lock bolt went, so let's see here. I was in the middle of a thought, because there's a dimple there. The edges are like that basically, so I had trouble shoving the shim above or below the other one. I basically had to try to get it right in between the other 2 shims so they could fill up the recess, if that makes any sense whatsoever. But you will have to kind of fight with that just a little bit. It probably would have been easier to take it all apart, put it in the dimple there and put it back together. I wasn't too thrilled with that idea, so since all I have down at the bottom here is the bearing, I'm going to, okay, there. Now I can see the flat. I can turn it, best guess, and shove it back in. And let's see. Yes, I can see it. I need it flush on the other side, basically. So let's wiggle it around here a little bit. Well, I think I've got the flat spot there. Yep, that's it. But it's fairly snug in the dog bone. So what's happening here is I'm trying to fight the dog bone. So let's okay, there we go. I got enough resistance off it, and I was able to move it to the side a little bit. Here's the lock bolt. Okay, and we're just going to tap it down. I'll have to check that fit a little bit, but basically what I want to do is I want to see that my shim pack, it's not too tight, I'm not binding up. I don't have any drag anywhere. That feels pretty good. And I also don't feel any play. Okay? I got a tiny bit here. That could be partly because the Kingpin's not cranked down tight. So, okay, now that I know that that shim pack works, I can set it aside, I can do the other one, and then I can get greasy all at one time and do all the assembly at one time. So, that's what will happen.